holistic emails, email and more, a Q&A with. Sorry for the delay. Every 2 weeks, we showcase a different topic and we have different panelists join us. It's not rehearsed. As you can see, I just paused and said sorry for the delay. That wasn't in the final cut. And you, the live audience, get to ask us your burning questions. If you heard the siren, sorry again, that's how you can see it's not rehearsed. I'm Adiola Sol, and I'm sure you guys should be more than used to me by now. I'm the senior consultant at Holistic Email, and I'm your host and lovely moderator today for Email and More. With me, I have Cath Pay, who's the CEO of Holistic Email. There she is. I have Karen Talavera of Synchronicity Marketing. Do you want to give us a wave? There she is. And Rick Montvilla of Map Digital. Thank you. So our topic today is email tactics to increase.
Sorry, wrong one.
Oh.
Email strategy.
See, I told you it's not rehearsed.
We're talking about email strategy.
We're talking about email strategy, not tactics. So we're talking about email strategy. Apologies. This is going to be in our bloopers. So you can see all of our crazy mishaps at the end of the year. And so whilst you're typing your questions about strategy, I'm going to ask our panelists to quickly introduce themselves. So I'm going to pick at random. I was going to pick Rick, but I'm going to give him a break today. So Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Oh, thanks so much, Adela. It's great to be here. Hello to my fellow panelists and everyone who's joining. I'm Karen Talavera from Synchronicity Marketing, where our logo, our motto is making email marketing easier. So I've got 20 years in this space, doing a lot of strategy, consulting, and education for clients. I am based in the US and currently living in the mountain town of Breckenridge, Colorado, which is a pretty well-known ski resort over on this side of the pond. And so it's morning for me. Got some coffee going. I'm happy to be here and, have this discussion.
We're happy to have you. Very jealous that you're in a glamorous ski resort. But thank you for joining us today. Now, Rick, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Sure. Hey, Karen, and hey, Cath. So my name is Rick. I head up strategy at Map Digital. At Map, we provide insights-led customer engagement, which also includes email marketing. But also I'm the ambassador in a Map community that's called Improve Your Marketing, which is actually to do with this topic, right? It's kind of helping marketers to figure out what tactics you can use to build up your strategy for your next year. So
Great.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Cath Pay, and I'm sure some of you know Cath, but for those who don't, Cath, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, hi, I'm Cath. I'm a CEO of Holistic Email Marketing, and together Adiola and I do a lot of the consulting of our clients. I've been in the industry now for 20 plus years. Very, very passionate about email, very passionate about CRM, and love doing email and more.
Amazing. So do I. Okay, so like I said, those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and I'll make sure that our esteemed panelists get back to you during this webinar. But I'm going to kick things off with this question. Why do I need a specific strategy for a single marketing channel like email? Don't companies just send an email when they need or want to? Who wants to jump in and get this one going?
It's such a huge one.
It is. There are so many different answers to this.
I'll brave the waters here.
Yeah.
Woo! Go, Karen.
Great. Well, so my bone to pick has been for a long time that email has been an afterthought for so many brands, and that they've approached it as something they'll do in their spare time, something that's, kind of easy, or that they can whip out a campaign, and kind of just, get email out the door after they've done everything else. Well, that was certainly true in the early days, but now we have so many digital channels that complement each other, or that should and can complement each other, that haphazard shotgun approach needs to die, you know? And so this is not a harsh judgment on anyone who's struggling resource-wise or time-wise to put together a strategy, because that's a real issue too.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a call to realize that there are so many nuances, details, and powerful features that can be done with email. I mean, automation, and obviously, you know, AI-driven campaigns. Cath, I know you write a lot about that. That can make it a huge, you know, driver of revenue straight into a company that without a strategy, you are just leaving money on the table and missing these huge opportunities. So yes, it is, you know, should not be like the forgotten stepchild of the family. It should come front and center, and in many ways can connect and be the connector to all these other digital and even offline channels when it's done strategically.
I'm actually, oh, sorry, go on.
No.
All right. I'm actually finding it quite hard to hold back on this topic.
Don't hold back.
So you see, email, I think it's been around for about 50 years now, right? I've been doing email for probably a third of my entire lifetime. And I've reached a point where I'm just being very blunt about the inefficiencies that I can see in the campaigns that people are doing. And I think the reason, when Karen was saying people are kind of looking at it as the kind of the child kind of there in the corner, it's because people don't consider the value of email, right? Because it's free. You know, I have a list, I press the send button, I have this huge surge of traffic into my website. So, and it doesn't really cost that much money. But in reality, you know, email is the workhorse in marketing, right? It can give you this major uplift in traffic at a very, very low cost. It can teach you so much about your audiences. When you're launching a new product, you know, you send an email, you know exactly what works for whom, which you can then use in other kind of advertising channels and whatnot. But I think the thing that I struggle with most is that most brands treat email like this just source of driving traffic into stores or on the website. But it does so much more than that, right? Because email is that kind of it's not just that sign outside the shop saying, hey, please come in, right? It's also the concierge that's standing by the door, you know, in a physical environment and kind of and identifies you. It's like, hey, I remember you, right? You know, it's the identifier on across all these different channels. It's that personal shopper inside the store, right? It's recommending things that you never thought about before. It's also that personal thank you note from the store manager that appreciates all the business we've done them, right? So it does so many other things. And I think because it doesn't cost much, brands don't consider kind of that, they don't think that we need to create a strategy around it, right? So, and because of that, they purely just do the basics, right? They do the abandoned basket maybe, or they implemented abandoned basket 2 years ago, and they haven't really reflected on it. They haven't improved it. They haven't changed it. Yeah. So much opportunity to improve that, right? Yeah. And so that I really struggle with that topic.
Do you think that there's like a misunderstanding with just how powerful and how vital email can be, and actually that even if you implement, let's say, an abandoned basket, it doesn't mean you just stop there, that there are different iterations that can be adopted? Do you feel like perhaps that knowledge is probably overlooked?
I think people feel like, I've done the abandoned basket, I've ticked the box, or I've done the basic tactic, I've ticked the box, let's move on to the next one. Let's find another abandoned basket program that will deliver as much revenue. Yeah. In some cases, adding an emoji is not going to be enough, right? You know, with one customer, for example, we didn't improve the creative, we didn't improve the subject line. All we've done is we improved the customer identification rates, right? So being able to identify more customers, therefore we're sending 4 times, in fact, it wasn't 4, it was 12 times more emails that we identify customers. Like that just beaten all the revenue targets, you know, and you can't recreate that with any other program, right? So there's so many small improvements that people don't think about, or, you know, optimizing in mobile can double the improvement, right? And it's just about constantly looking for these improvements. You know, that's what brands should be doing.
Yeah. I love this passion, Rick. And you know what? We've got someone who agrees with you. our pal Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
He has basically he agrees with your observation in regards to email, and he kind of wonders, do you feel like companies would value their email connection to customers more if they actually had to pay, in capital letters, for it?
I think it's less about paying. I think, and I'll I have a set of kind of a webinars kind of coming up that talks about the topic. I think the main problem is the measurement, right? You know, I've been talking to many major brands in UK and outside of UK, and they say they want to be the most customer centric. You know, we want to be the most customer centric, and we're going to do this through email. And our main KPI is revenue, clicks, and opens. And that's fundamentally flawed, right? Because email does so much more than just driving the revenue or driving traffic in store. You know, it's about retention. It's about identification. You know, people also use emails as a coupon library, right? So it's recognizing that and making sure those coupons are available when they're needed. So I think what the industry has to do is start focusing on other metrics for email marketing beyond just revenue and opens and click rates, and everything else will follow.
Wonderful.
I totally agree. And all of that, of course, would be within, like, bedded into the strategy as well, because it needs to be a written strategy. But, you know, I've been training and I teach a lot on strategy and developing a strategy. And most of the marketers that I speak to, they don't have a strategy. That has, over the 10 plus years I've been teaching about it, it has actually increased in percentage. So more marketers have got strategy than ever before. But still, the latest strategy survey I did was earlier this year, and we're still talking less than 50% have a strategy, right? Now, where I think everything all comes down to it is I think that's for a couple of reasons, because this is, you know, obviously what I do, and it's very frustrating. I know it's been frustrating for Rick and Karen as well over the years. But I think it's to a certain degree of, when an email marketer comes into email marketing, there's no degree that you can go and get an email marketing degree, which of course would kick off immediately with, okay, here's how you do a strategy, right? So most email marketers just fall into email marketing. And what they're given straight away is, oh, you've got to learn this technology. And so they learn the technology, and then they go and see what the technology can do. And then they're given, because email is also very under-resourced, under-budgeted, you know, channel, which I talk about a lot. Then what happens is they get given their revenue KPI that they have to meet. And so therefore, they're given very little time, very little resource and everything. So what are they going to focus on? They're going to focus on a tactic. And so what happens then is they use technology to create tactics. And then suddenly you've got an email program that has been put together out of bits and pieces as such. They've read an article here says, oh yes, you know, you've done a ban and cart, great. Well, maybe you want to have a ban and browse, brilliant. Okay, so let's go and put that together. And then they just sort of put these together without an overarching view, plan, strategy, goal, you know, everything all coming together and making sure it all links in and communicates, like what Rick is saying, because everything he's been saying is talking about customer journey, customer experience. And this is really, really key. And this is where we are at now with email marketing, where we're beyond that whole just send out singular campaigns. We understand now that email is a driver, a key driver of traffic to the website. Therefore, we actually begin the customer experience and the customer journey many, many times, which means we have to make sure that we are giving them that lovely, seamless experience. And we're only going to be able to do that with a well thought out strategy. And I think that's where we're missing out a lot.
And I want to ask my fellow panelists, I feel like there is a fundamental basis of email and a lot of digital channels that is a completely lost art. So back in the olden days of the 90s, when I started my career, it was in direct marketing, direct response marketing, which is a whole different approach from mass advertising or branding. It's a mindset. It is a, you know, direct to consumer approach that legacy offline channels like catalog and direct mail were very good at. a lot of that, of course, moved online, but the mindset didn't go with it. So
interesting.
like Cath was saying, you know, most of the people that we've probably worked with and know in email marketing fell into it, but they didn't come up through, say, CRM roles or direct marketing roles or positions with those kind of titles and get that foundation and that learning. And I think that's a lot of what's missing as well, is understanding what, you know, what are the, how does direct marketing work? There's an art and a science to it. What are the drivers, regardless of the channel, that are going to get people to respond and engage directly? And how do we take that into email and not be so obsessed with the technology part of things?
Yeah.
You know, but that is part of the science of it. The other thing too is, you know, based on the question from Matt, one of the participants here, if people, you know, would companies value this connection with their customers more? Would they value, I think he's asking, would they value the channel more if they had to pay for it? You know, to flip that, maybe it's, what if you knew what an email subscriber was really worth to you, you know, and what your customers engaging with email were doing with you from a revenue standpoint? If you could track that every year, that's a metric we call revenue per email. Not every business model is going to be able to do that. Not every kind of company that uses email is going to be able to attribute revenue directly to that channel. But for those people who can and don't track that measurement, I think they're not understanding how valuable this is.
And I want to add to that, because actually I've been with a few companies that have tracked the revenue per email and found that the number is quite high, but then again, don't really understand how to build around that. So they understand the number. So if the director was to say, okay, how much is a subscriber worth? Okay, they're worth £11, 12 pence. But then they don't really understand then what to do with that number and how to kind of gatekeep those subscribers, that those ones that are actual monetary value and have gone on to do so much more. They're not ring fencing. There isn't anything that they're particularly doing with them. And again, I think it stems back to most of your points, is that people are falling into it. And so the art of understanding email and the art of building strategies is to some degree lost. And I think that's where there needs to be a knowledge share, that people start to understand, okay, of these KPIs, of these metrics, how can we build upon those strategies to either increase their value? And of those who are not showing so much, you know, value, what can we do with those people? So yeah, I think everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah. And Matthew's also brought up another really, really good point too in the chat. And he's talking about how the metrics, because we are so led by ESPs, right? With what features that they give us, with how we do things, that they are very campaign oriented, the metrics they provide. And you know, and that's why to a certain degree, you know, those opens and clicks, they're the ones that are always measured. And then the ones beyond that are lesser so, because it depends on the capabilities and the integrations and all that kind of stuff that you have with the rest of your technology. But Matthew's suggesting or saying, asking the question, so do you think we should be more customer metrics rather than campaign? I think you need to have both. I think you need to start looking at the customer type of metrics and understand, you know, and that does include things like open reach and click rate, you know, and the average order value and everything as well, not just, and definitely customer lifetime value. And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of them out there. And I think that's where we need to go. Certainly if we are wanting to get out of the rut where the C-suite don't fully understand, I believe they don't fully understand the potential that they have with email. I think that they're thinking it delivers the highest return on investment. We're happy chappies, right? We'll leave it at that, because they can't really be doing much better, can they? It's like, I'm sorry, we can, but we need more budget and more resources accordingly. And then that will give us then the ability to actually be delivering more. So I do think there is a little bit of a stickiness there with just the incomprehensibility. Is that a word?
It is today.
Yeah,
Well, actually, that leads on quite nicely to the next
Hey, Viola,
question.
sorry,
Oh,
sorry. I'm really desperate to answer the question about ESPs as a vendor.
go ahead, Rick.
Sorry.
Fire away.
So kind of from vendor's point of view, you know, it's a similar dilemma that we kind of came across, and we tried creating better ways for our customers to measure, but then we realized that it's not something that we have a skill in ourselves, right? So we ended up kind of acquiring a company that does customer insights. And that really changed just my personal kind of a way I look at email marketing as well, because you know I've been doing this for, you know, as I said, further my life, but then I started seeing these customer insights that come out that are linked to the email channel, and you know when I was having conversations with some customers, it was just fascinating to see how they bring in all these different agencies and different vendors that represent different channels. And they all have their own different metrics and KPIs and dashboards that they report against, right? So all of them report on revenue, whether it's social media, whether it's email, whether it's paid media. They all have these revenue targets. And when you add up all the revenue, you know, suddenly the company made, you know, 3 times more revenue than they actually did, right? Yeah. So it's just fascinating. And then they think about these tactics. How do we improve? How do we improve next campaign? But what we've done there is we actually said, well, actually, how about we give you a single set of KPIs and dashboards so you actually can understand what role does that channel actually play in converting a certain type of customer. So if you're in the market for buying high-end electronics, what email is actually doing there? And then as a group, if you agree on that, say, actually, yeah, email is the nurture channel. It's not a conversion channel, it's the nurture channel for that. And then if you'll agree that that's what you're doing, well, not only you can change the kind of the way you monitor performance of email, we can also change the content, right? So you're no longer focusing content on click here, buy now, add to cart, right? The content could say, you know, here's an amazing video of how you can use the product, right? But marketers, email marketers don't feel like they can do that because their target is revenue. You know, they can't send too much content that's educational and kind of inspiring because they have to deliver that revenue target. But if the marketing team agrees overall that in this particular scenario, email is there to deliver the nurture, then that's what we do, right? And we're all winning.
and that's why
I like it, but it's controversial.
That's why the customer lifetime value metric is so important, because that's taking into account all of that. And therefore it's you are going to be measuring your campaigns, of course you are, but you're not going to be, you know, if you have that surprise and delight or campaign, which doesn't necessarily earn revenue instantly, right? It's more of a long-term thing, or a little nudge email, or that nurturing email, which goes, you know, goes and contributes to creating loyalty and everything, then they're still going to be in the collective, you know, the mix with the customer lifetime value. And as long as you have got attribution, you know, sort of, which we have touched on before, you know, the email and mores, because that's a bit of a tricky situation.
Yeah, I actually do agree, you know, in terms of looking at the function of email in terms of the customer journey. And, you know, if data or evidence suggests that, okay, email is part of the nurturing stage, then adapting to that, but it's then changing the mindset of everybody else that we may no longer be as revenue focused. So perhaps those KPIs come down because now our role has changed. So whenever I hear suggestions like this, I'm always thinking of the audience in terms of practicality, because someone else might be thinking, yes, I agree. I would love to have more content-based campaigns, but in reality, can they put that on paper and present it to somebody? So I would say it would be a great way to more or less use the data to support whether or not that is the case for your channel, and then doing small tests on the side and seeing if there is a way that you can build credibility on that side. Because I do think, Rick, that's a very, very good point. Sometimes we do just see email as this one function in the customer journey. It's this one purpose, but actually it could be something completely different. Or have multiple uses in that case.
Yes, I know it's how to feel under the weather, but this is a topic I'm very passionate about. The way I like to describe this challenge to the customers that I speak, it's like if you just focus on the key email metrics like opens, clicks, delivery, and revenue, it's the equivalent of you focusing on your weight to manage your healthy lifestyle, right? It's like, yes, that's going to help you, but you're probably going to create so many other problems by just losing weight, right? And it's exactly what we're doing in marketing, right? There's so many other ways that we can improve ourselves.
Love it. Okay. And just as a quick reminder for those that are watching live at the moment, feel free to ask any questions. There are no questions that we can't handle. And even if we feel like we can't handle, we got Matt done. Like, we've got Matt as well. So we're really ready and armed today. So this actually builds quite nicely, and Matt is very thrilled with my shout out. This actually moves quite nicely onto our next question. So my company doesn't have a process for creating marketing or specific marketing channel strategies. What is a simple approach you can recommend for developing an email marketing strategy? In other words, what's a process for getting started? It's kind of, this is also quite a meaty one.
Well, I'll take a stab at that, and maybe try to build on what you said, Rick. Which this is something I'm passionate about too. And I'm thinking of a colleague that often says email's efficiencies are its own worst enemy, because it is so affordable, right?
Right.
That,
yes.
I mean, I think just the simple fact is that if it costs as much as some of the other channels, just take television broadcasting, as maybe a super expensive marketing channel, that of course everybody would have a strategy, because there is no way companies would allow that large, of a percentage of the budget to be spent without knowing exactly how, everything's going to go, without having a very specific strategy with very specific defined goals and outcomes. So, back to this current question, I don't think there's one right answer to this. There are lots of approaches. I know Cath teaches certain approaches. I've developed kind of my own construct or paradigm, but to keep it really simple for today, I would say a couple of things as far as getting started. Think holistically, think about integrating email with other channels, but also think about exactly what the messaging strategy will be within the channel. So how does, part of the challenge is, how do I develop a mix or a variety of messages and contacts through email that makes sense when I look at them as one big picture in terms of how I'm speaking to my customers or subscribers, and how do they make sense outside of just the channel of email when they're connected to the touches happening through social or through the website or over the phone or what have you. And then don't overwhelm yourself. Start with a 3 to 6 month plan, annual at the most, because you will have to be adaptable and pivot, as we've certainly seen in 2020, right? With the minute the pandemic hit, all kinds of messages and campaigns going out the door that I'm sure marketers did not have a contingency plan for. Very few probably did, or anticipated having to send.
Yeah. Yeah. You've kind of segued, you've moved into a question that I wanted to ask later. So I'm no more talking about contingencies and pandemics until
so we put that aside, and it will, that's coming later. All right.
Later.
So when I do my courses, and I'm talking about the strategy side of things, because like I said, most of them have never created a strategy before. And I think to a certain degree, one of my main aims is to not to show them how, but also to dispel any confusion or, lack of knowledge about it, or fear even. There's a lot of fear about creating a strategy. So I just say, okay, well, let's start at the top. I always think, starting at the top is always a good place, rather than starting, and Karen and I did a webinar once on strategy. And I tend to, which is what I said before, most people tend to start at the bottom with a tactic. But if we start at the top, what is your business objective? right? So now we're talking about, let's identify what the business objective is, or business objectives. Then we go in and we say, okay, well, how are we going to, what marketing objectives are going to be helping us to achieve that business objective? And then we go and write down our marketing objectives. Ideally, these should be for the different life stages. So we should have acquisition objectives, we should, multiple ones. We should have conversion, retention, win back, you know, whatever is relevant for your business. And then what happens is that you then go and pick one of those ones, one of those objectives. So say it's you know, one of the ones in conversion. Okay, great. So now we're going to go through and we're going to identify what kind of strategy would we put in place to achieve that? What are some things that we would do? And then before you know it, you've just written out a list of tactics, which is going to help you to achieve that particular marketing objective, which is going to help you achieve your business objective, right? And then you go and do that for all of them. And before you know it, your strategy is created. And because you are focusing totally on the actual, you know, the objectives, and also taking that very, you know, holistic perspective and also customer centric perspective of it, then you're going to, you know, create this what Adiola and I call a living, breathing document, because it's going to be continually updated and changed. Because, you know, if anyone has a strategy this year, right, had a strategy, say in January 2020, and they haven't gone and updated it, then your strategy is not a living, breathing strategy, because it would definitely need to be updated for this year. But we're not going down there yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can chat from my point of view, I'll probably say if someone hasn't done that yet, I'll probably say, do you begin with the obvious ones? So, you know, there will be some tactics that you know you're going to end up with, you know, your typical abandoned basket, your data capture, your re-engagement, you know, whilst you're working a strategy, just get those done as basic as they are, because, you know, that's a very, very valuable thing. But then obviously kind of keep on reiterating. And my biggest advice that kind of I give any customers is, if you're just starting off and you don't have kind of a fully automated workflow set up, just get the basics out there and then improve them later. Like, don't try to build the most sophisticated, personalized, dynamic program that is recommending the most kind of a hyper personalized product in that particular color, that particular size. Like, all those things are great, but the chances are not all brands even need that. Maybe the cost of creating that collateral or buying that platform might be too high, right? Just get the basics in and then continuously iterate and test and continuously improve. Because, you know, I've seen customers that start with nothing and then they say, okay, I want to build this, you know, 8-step kind of a welcome program. Okay, great. But what about all these other things, right? Just make sure you have a welcome, the most basic one in place, have an abandoned basket in place, have a retention program in place, and then continuously add on them. You know, that's one of my biggest advice that I can give.
100% agree. Yeah. Just get something out there, just so that there is that welcome email, just so that there is, and then learn from that, and then improve, increase if needs be, add more, everything like that. Totally. Yeah.
Exactly.
I often say, please crawl before you walk before you run. The goal is not to start, you know, walk out the door and run a marathon. And iteration, we hear this all the time, you know, in the industry, is you know, consistent incremental gains in iterating, or, you know, building on past learnings, and modifying the programs you have based on those is the name of the game.
Yeah.
But most importantly, do not forget to come back to those programs, right? Because I've seen, you know, with brands that come to us, I've seen the programs they have and they say, hey, but we're doing everything. Like, what else is there to do? But then you look at them and you realize, oh my God, they're now mobile optimized. You click on an abandoned basket email, it doesn't rebuild the cart, right? So because people don't use one device, they use multiple devices. You know, when I open the basket on mobile, the basket is not there anymore, right? These are such a simple things, but they could kind of accelerate, you know, the amount of revenue you can generate for this program. So do remember to come back to those programs again. Don't just create them and leave them. You know, there's so much improvement. to be heard.
Yes,
Yeah.
automated programs are not there to set and forget.
Yeah.
I like that, it rhymes. Right, so next question. I'm going to come on to it because I feel like we have time, but we seem to be going into so much detail, which is really good. I want to make sure we have time to talk about this because it's quite timely. So with the pandemic still with us, how can you build a strategy that has a contingency? Is there any advice?
I can take it if you guys.
Go ahead. There is no rule. Fire away.
So from my point of view, I think the contingency comes from doing many things at the same time, right? Because we don't know what's happening. You know, we're in a lockdown, we're not in a lockdown, right? So you can't be just shifting all your efforts into just this one channel or just another channel. You know, the contingency will come from building this resiliency through all these multiple tactics, making sure you do have a process for getting the data in store. You have the contingency for getting data kind of on the high street, you know, the kind of the customer signups, and just kind of improving as many things at the same time. You know, that's kind of my major advice. You know, don't try just putting all your eggs in one basket.
I like that.
My contingency plan, and this isn't going to come as a surprise to anyone who knows me, is going to be basically be testing everything you possibly can, because it's the here and the now that matters here. It's not what you found out and tested last year that's going to actually have an impact here, because we're talking everything's just blown up and out of the water. So things are so different. You can't look back on year. You can't necessarily say, okay, all of our learnings from last year are still valid. So you need to go back to square one, start testing and seeing what is working. So don't just test though to see what is working with that particular program, but start testing to see what, you know, is motivating your customers. Because I can probably tell you that, you know, there's going to be a lot of different motivations. You know, we've just been talking about, you know, Black Friday and their motivations, and there's lots of research, and they're talking about, you know, people are going to be, because there's less budget around, they're going to be more motivated to be buying regular things at a discounted price than they would usually, you know, as they are on a Black Friday, buying special things.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, all of these are very valid learning. So have a look.
Yeah. I would add, and this is something that digital marketers always need to be prepared to stay nimble, stay flexible, and that things are going to continue to change. You know, and there's that tried and true saying, the only thing constant is change. We've seen a lot of it already. I think it's going to continue. We're going to see an evolution of new ways to do things. And when I think of how the pandemic affected email, I think of two main things. One, purchase channels changed. You know, online e-commerce just got a massive push forward and may actually eclipse brick and mortar retail in some categories for the first time this holiday season. And the other thing is the psychological effect on people. You know, so how we speak to them, what we say to them, how we add value to their lives, how we understand their mindset might affect our creative, or, you know, the part of email that is the copy and the images and the overall sentiment that our messages come across, because everyone's in a different place. You know, a lot of people are economically struggling.
Yeah, it's true.
Some people are not economically struggling, but their whole life has been upended. You know, and they're struggling with having too many people under one roof. So it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to continue to evolve from here.
Forget
about going back. There's no going back. Yeah.
You've made it sound like, this is it. This is us now. So don't even bother looking back there. You just got to keep facing forward. But I guess it is. And I do like what you said, Karen, in regards to being mindful. And I think that definitely can be a strategy that is also adopted in terms of your comms in the future, being mindful, a lot more thoughtful, more helpful, as we've Cath and I have discussed you know, in the past, in terms of like helpful marketing. So not necessarily always having a strategy that is focused around just generating revenue, but of being of service, and that, you know, usually in turn can actually end up being a revenue driver, simply because you've taken a different stance. So, you know, don't be afraid necessarily to sorry, Matt, don't necessarily be too constrained to your KPIs and your targets in one robust way of doing things. There are different ways in which you can build your strategies that still have an impact on your audience.
Well, I'll add a final thought on that. I've always been a big advocate of creating dialogues and conversations with people in this channel.
Yeah.
You know, that the batch and blast approach of the early days really, you know, also needs to stay in the past. That doesn't mean that broadcast communication isn't relevant for certain types of campaigns, but why shouldn't we be? Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be more human, more personal, more conversational. And the word that comes to mind for me, especially this year, is more empathic, showing empathy, showing that we can walk in the hearts and minds and the shoes of our customers and understand what they're going through. Will create that resonance and that tone that probably should have been there all along, but, you know, maybe we sacrifice that for the sake of practicality. We're serving our own needs. I don't know that we can afford to do that in the current climate as much. You know, I don't think we can afford to sacrifice the connection and the emotional side of our messaging for practicality right now.
Yeah. That actually would be a good strategy to adopt, to be honest, and see who is actually brave enough to change the tone of their campaigns and see how that yields for them in the future. That in itself is a strategy.
It's a good test, at least.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That is, as you referred though, Adeola, it is the essence of helpful marketing, and helpful marketing it's just repackaging up. You've still got your same objectives. Your customers have got their same objectives. You're helping your customer to achieve their objective, which therefore means that you in turn achieve yours. But you're focusing on the customer. And that's where the empathy, that's where the helpfulness, that's where, you know, basically just the customer focus comes in. You're still, you know, you've still got to meet your KPIs and everything, but you're doing it just from a helpful perspective.
Yeah. It does link back to the overall brand values, right? And I think many marketers previously struggled because, you know, their personal values, you know, especially with kind of the new generation entering this industry, you know, they kind of struggled just kind of just fueling this kind of a consumerism or anything else that comes with that. But I think this is really exciting time to be in digital marketing right now, because, you know, I think no one will kind of will dismiss the fact that advertising and digital marketing has been, you know, fueling kind of a discrimination and kind of a racial biases, gender biases, and a kind of a meaningless consumerism, all these things. But now new generations entering marketing and actually realizing that CMOs not only kind of tolerate ethical messages, they actually encourage you, like they're giving you money to go and promote the values that you stand for. Like, so I think if you're entering digital marketing right now, this is a really exciting time to be in right now, because now you're getting paid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Okay. Ooh, right. So next question. There are two that I'd love us to try and get some time to talk about. But the first one is, how do I keep my strategy specific yet flexible and adaptable? We're asking a lot right now from this strategy. But yeah, how can someone keep their strategy specific, but at the same time it has movement to be adaptable? Yeah, I know it's tricky.
I think I would always say, when you build it, it should be built in a way that it's adaptable to start with, right? So, you know, as you design your, as Cath was talking about, the kind of designing your objectives, your strategies, then defining tactics, and everything else will follow. And I think as you have all your tactics mapped out, and then you plan for your, you know, next 2 weeks, next month, you just pick the tactics that are most appropriate with the kind of with the priorities of the business. But I don't imagine your overall objective, so your entire strategy will change. I think is which tactics you prioritize to be more in line with your kind of a next quarter's goals.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you have, just like, you know, in a home or a structure that's being built, think of your email strategy as something you're building, you're architecting, you know, and the bones aren't going to change. You need to have, you know, a strong foundation. You need to have types of communications, whether they're promotional or they're bringing in new business or supporting new business development, whether B2B, B2C. You probably need to have some types of campaigns that engage or re-engage people that aren't responding, you know, to those other elements. But how you decorate that building, you know, or how you configure the rooms and how you use the rooms needs to be able to be flexible. You can move the furniture around, right? So if that's a useful analogy for people, it's, you know, have a solid structure, have great bones and have the necessary parts of your creation, but don't plan it so that everything is so cemented that you cannot change tone, or you cannot change your message mix or your frequency, or even your creative and brand personality if you need to.
So I used that same, it was not an analogy, it was an analogy with a personal story in my upcoming book. So about, you know, strategy basically being the same as, you know, getting an architect in to actually design the house and everything, rather than just handing it over to the builder and just say, go for it, you know. Because if you did do that, if you hand it over to the builder, well, then there's a very good chance it might become a little bit more restrictive as well. So yeah, cool.
Amazing. Okay. And next question. Oh, and guys, those that are watching, please, again, feel free, if you've got any questions, feel free to push them through. We definitely love reading out your questions live. Right, so next one. And I think, to be fair, we've kind of spoken about this. This one is a little bit rogue. When thinking, what are the examples, or do you have any examples of how someone can gear up for this festive season when thinking about seasonality strategies? I know it's quite hard, because you know, in terms of like what you said, Karen, in terms of there's no going back, you know, like what we did before. We're in a very different ecosystem at the moment, and we really are. So I think there has to be some form of new adoptions given here when looking at the festive periods, whether it's Black Friday or Christmas sales, or festive sales, should I say. You know, so do you guys have any examples or recommendations on how someone can kind of battle this new time that we're going in that is very different to any that we've been in, you know, ever?
Yeah, I've got a recommendation. We did a webinar on this last week. So go check it out. We had some great speakers talk about it. And I think it is. I think it's, again, it's taking the more marketer effect. So being the strategist, being the curator, being the director. And that's what we need to be focusing on, rather than, you know, just these quick little tips and tricks and things like that, that sort of, okay, well, if we just slash this price, or if we just do this, you know, you may get that, you will, because certainly when we're talking about Black Friday, you know, they're very, very conditioned to be reacting positively to reduced prices. But I think this year it's going to be a little bit different, you know, because there is that, and you know, and along with in this webinar, we were also asked a question by someone in the audience that was saying, how, you know, so as a marketer, you have to do what you're paid to do, right? And market the product. But at the same time, you know, there is this whole balance of trying to make sure that you are still ethical as well, understanding that people are going to be under a lot of pressure financially, or distraught, or whatever the story is. So how can we do that? And my answer to that one was, again, if you are doing helpful email marketing, then you are going to be ethical. You can't help but be ethical, because all you're doing is helping them to achieve their objective. And so, you know, think of it that way as well.
I have a couple of sort of tactical recommendations, but to just build on what you said strategically, you know, what comes to mind for me is how overwhelming holiday email marketing has become, how flooded inboxes have become in recent years. The sheer volume of messages is probably more than most consumers can keep up with today. So I think back to some, you know, big brand clients I had last year that had a holiday strategy mapped out by about this time of the year. I mean, they started working on it in August or September, you know, for sure. And while for many brands, retail, you know, e-commerce, anybody that can sell anything online, it's all about discounts, promotions, getting people to buy. Yes, people still need and want their stuff. But I'm curious about whether brands will be able to give up as much margin this year, depending on how, you know, again, 2020 and the pandemic may have affected overall sales. So that may play out with different types of communication going out the door rather than just the heavy discounts and promotions. By the same token, I think if brands and marketers don't connect the dots between all of these holiday seasonal campaigns that they're sending, find some creative way. I guess my message is find a creative way, find a thematic way. 12 days of Christmas, you know, that, or maybe it's Monday surprise sale or whatever, or some day of the week kind of thing, to help people, to shepherd them, to literally walk them through how to transact with you and how to follow the path. You know, it's almost like dropping gold coins on the path to get somebody to the desired destination. You know, show them a path and drop the coins, and they will be interested in using a creative tactic like a holiday theme story or real customer stories, you know. And I mean, I can think of tons of tactics that relate to different product sectors or different industry sectors that would be relevant for the holidays. But I don't think there's any shortage of creativity that can be applied. I think it just really hasn't been done in recent years. It's been a little scattershot, and the message has been buy, 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 rather than building a, you know, relationship, telling a story, laying out the path, and using that as a thematic approach to minimize this holiday insanity of over promotion.
Yeah, I also think that perhaps new tactics for the season might be a little bit late. I can see Karen already has a picture of a Christmas tree right there hanging behind her. It's not decorated yet, but I think we're probably already a bit late for new tactics. But I would probably say that this is such a good opportunity to learn about your customer behaviors, just understanding who is more price sensitive, who is less price sensitive, who is willing to kind of pay the full price, maybe who isn't, or maybe which customers you acquire just during this period, right? That will give you so much insights to plan a strategy for 2021, and just understand how kind of how previous shopping experience changed to this year. I think that will be very, very critical.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually, and I have a good example of probably by far one of my, this is from me as a consumer speaking, by far one of my most favorite kind of a Black Friday campaigns. That was 2017 by kind of a fashion retail, Toast London. Yep. So whilst all the other kind of retailers were sending these 80% off, 50% off sales, they sent an email with a subject line, candles, crackers, and cowbells. And it was a picture of hot water bottle, right? And what they were doing is because they are a luxury retailer, right? They don't want to promote themselves as, hey, here's a major sale, come and buy from us. But what they do recognize is that consumers are sitting there with their Amex in front of the screen, looking for the deals, right? So whilst they're not incentivizing this 80% off kind of insanity, but they just reminded them, by the way, if you're going to be spending money on something, instead of spending that money on TVs and items that you've never heard of before only because they're cheap, why not buy a good quality item, a toast, right? And I think that was by far the most genius Black Friday campaign that I've seen.
Yeah, I like that. It's going against the grain.
Right.
And that definitely will help you stand out in the inbox as well during that season, is when you decide to go against the grain. I like it when like you said, Rick, I like it when I see brands that make fun of themselves as well during sale periods. I remember seeing one that was it wasn't as long as what I'm going to say, but it was along the lines of, yes, I know, another sale email, but we promise this one's going to be good, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's hella funny. So it entices you to open, and it's a very good strategy to have around that festive period, because like you said, Karen, it's you can become, your inbox is inundated with so many different messages, so many different offers. So I think it is quite a nice idea to trial going against the grain and seeing if you're able to capture your subscribers' audiences that way, because you at that moment you're competing for their attention. You now have turned roles, so all of a sudden the brands are kind of like those toddlers asking for their mum to carry them, and it's who is going to get the attention first. So how can you go about that? So yeah, I mean, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but does anybody have anything else to add before we close? Everyone's reading.
I guess I'll preach for a second. It just give email the seat at the table, the credit and the value it deserves, and approach your strategy as if you are creating a conversation, having a conversation, building a relationship, and creating a long-term connection to people. And if you do that, of course, you're going to be human. Of course, you're going to have personality. Of course, you're going to hopefully go against the grain and show your subscribers and customers that you're interested in them, listening to them, and trying to walk in their shoes and understand, what they're doing. That to me is sort of the holy grail. Not a lot of brands can do it. A lot of brands are afraid of it, but I think that's sort of the secret sauce.
Yeah, definitely. Any other closing remarks?
Well, I just think, building upon that, I think if you are going to be trialing it, now's a great time to do it, because everyone's thrown everything out basically, customers and all the rest of it. Now everyone is incredibly adaptable, and they're kind of like taking everything as is. So who knows, maybe yeah. But of course, when we say trial it, make sure that you're testing it. You're just randomly just throwing it out there and then fingers crossed.
Yeah, whenever we say trial, we mean test. When we say iterate, it's building upon. Please don't just throw things out there whimsically. But yeah, amazing. This has been so good. And can you believe an hour has gone by already? It's like so quick. But sadly, this is all we have time for today. And I do want to thank everyone for attending this event live, and for all of those in the future who'll be watching it on demand. Thank you for your time. And I really do hope that you found this useful and insightful. So please, leave us any feedback, because we'd love to know how well we've done, and obviously where we can improve, where we can iterate. So, we can keep on bringing you these lovely webinars. And of course, I have to say a massive thank you to our speakers today for sharing their experiences and expertise. I fully love all of the gusto and passion that you guys came with today. Rick, if I had to give anyone a gold star, it's you. It's you. So
that was great. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you.
amazing. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your experiences today. And I hope you guys that have been watching have found this useful. So until the next one, have a lovely evening or a day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.